On the night of February 1st, 2023, 30-year-old Eunice Dwumfour, a newly elected councilwoman in Sayreville, New Jersey, was found dead in the front seat of her SUV outside her home. She had been shot 14 times. What should have been an evening like any other ended in a brutal assassination that shook her tight-knit community. Dwumfour was more than a local politician. She was a mother, a church leader, and considered by many a rising star in Republican politics.
It was very shocking because things like this doesn't happen over here, and she's a very nice woman. She's always well dressed, she's nice to everyone, she's kind, respectful, and I can't believe this actually happened to her, and I feel so terrible for the family. I didn't know she was a politician. I've lived here for about a year now, and I've seen her many times. We've spoke, but I did not know she was a councilwoman.
Her death was widely condemned as a despicable criminal act, a violent strike against someone seen as dedicated to public service.
Hearing that happening to her, like, young black woman, she's like she said, she's beautiful. She doesn't do no harm to anybody, literally. She's a sweetheart. Like, we'll see her coming down the stairwell sometimes. It was one time she had, like, something in her hand that was really heavy. We helped her, bring it to her home.
It seemed like it was, like, work paperwork.
Yeah, so I honestly thought she was just, like, a regular businesswoman. I didn't even know she was a councilwoman.
In the months that followed, police arrested Rashid Ali Bynum and charged him with her murder, despite providing no motive for the heinous killing of the councilwoman. A jury later convicted him, and he was sentenced to life in prison. While no motive was made available at trial, there remains a critical question. Was this just an act of personal violence, or did someone stand to gain from her death? In any murder, the central question should always be, who benefits? In this documentary, we're not just going to accept the official narrative at face value. We're going to dig into who gained power, influence, or advantage from Eunice Dwumfour's killing. We'll examine possible motives, political, religious, personal, and look at the people and institutions that may have had something to gain. Because with a killing this shocking, the conviction alone doesn't tell the full story. During a December council meeting in 2022, Dwumfour, who served as the council's public safety liaison to the police department, made some remarks about how, growing up, she didn't have a good relationship with police officers and couldn't stand them. This prompted the union president, David Savilli, of Sayreville PBA Local 98, to write to Mayor Victoria Kilpatrick asking that Dwumfour be removed as liaison, citing great concern over Eunice's comments and the belief that she was anti-police. The letter was dated January 2nd, shortly after the December meeting.
Thank you so much. We wish you all a Merry, Merry Christmas and the happiest New Year. And once again, it's been a very privilege to serve as your public safety liaison. Even my first time, I never said this to the officers, but I mentioned this in church, that you changed my perspective even with police officers. Growing up, I didn't have a good relationship with police officers. I couldn't stand police officers, but for some reason, there was always a connection. And I had the privilege this year to sit in a boardroom meeting with Chief Zabrowski. I had the privilege to sit down with even our mayor. I had the privilege to have our former BA also there too. Mr. Dan, it's been a very, very awesome privilege. I look forward to also taking on the hat of public safety again next year and seeing what we can improve on much more and better things. Thank you so much for protecting and serving our town, everyone in public safety.
Despite the union's objections, Mayor Kilpatrick broke a 3-3 tie vote on the council to reappoint Dwumfour as the public safety liaison. This letter became of significant importance, expressing the tension between the local PBA and Eunice's reappointment. Shortly after Dwumfour's murder, Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office tried to block media access public records involving her death and went as far as filing a lawsuit to prevent the release of this public information. It is extremely uncommon for prosecutors to proactively sue to withhold such records.
Investigators have been especially tight-lipped in this case, even taking significant steps to shield public records from the media. Lewis Hockman is a reporter with Gothamist and WNYC who's been following this story and joins me now. I want to ask you first about the comments the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office gave to reporters yesterday, which wasn't a whole lot, but it's all we've been given so far. What did they tell us?
It was the first time the prosecutor's office had acknowledged something some other borough officials have been saying, is that they didn't believe that there was any ongoing threat to the public in the case. They weren't really clear about how they know that. They didn't say if there's a suspect. They didn't say if there's a motive they know about. And no arrest has been made, but it's the first they've hinted at any sense of what the crime might have been.
Yeah, we don't have any indication about a suspect or suspects, but it's also interesting that the office reversed course on a filing they had done in court to keep some of the public records away from the media in particular. Can you update us with what's happening there?
Sure. I and several other reporters and editors had the experience this week of finding ourselves respondents in a civil case that sought to preemptively determine that public records that we were seeking through the New Jersey's Open Public Records Act couldn't be released. Things like 911 calls, police transmissions, video that may have been collected as part of the investigation through dash cams or body cams. It's not uncommon for a prosecutor's office or another law enforcement agency to deny those requests if they think that they have an appropriate reason to. If we disagree, we can then challenge and sue them. It is very unusual for them to effectively sue us to stop us from getting that information as soon as we put in a request. I spoke to some transparency advocates who really thought that felt like intimidation. It felt like it would dissuade members of the public who are entitled to ask for records from doing so because they could think they could get dragged to court. But in less than a day's time, the prosecutor's office withdrew that filing and now says they'll respond to us each individually and let us know whether they plan to release anything to us. Was
there a reasoning given as to why they made that preemptive move? I think one of the transparency advocates you spoke with called it heavy-handed, but I know others have said that it creates this air of suspicion and feeling of lack of transparency within the government. What was the reasoning that the prosecutor's office gave?
It really didn't. If you look through the filing as it was, it doesn't say in any particular terms why just denying those requests, if they thought that was appropriate, wouldn't be enough, why they needed this maneuver. I can't speak to whether anything feels suspicious about that. I really wouldn't want to speculate that.
Gunshots. I looked out my window. I saw a man shooting into the driver's side of a white vehicle. And
what did this man look like?
It was far away. I don't know what the race was, but he had black. He had all black on.
The calls were nonstop.
I just heard gunshots outside. Okay, everybody's on their way up there, sir.
But still, the unmistakable sound of gunshots had gotten a lot of attention.
Do you see anybody outside?
My wife got up. She looked out the window. She saw somebody running.
There was a shooting in our street. I'm in the tub, and I heard gunshots, and my fiance looked out the window, and someone just got shot in the street.
After the shooting, the white Nissan Murano, driven by Dwumfour, rolled down the block and crashed into two parked vehicles.
Mayor of Sayreville speaking out for the first time since the death of her colleague and friend, Councilwoman Eunice Dwumfour. And tonight there's new information on the investigation. The mayor saying she turned over to investigators a letter from the town's police union. That letter objected to Dwumfour's January reappointment to lead the town's public safety committee. News 12 New Jersey's Alex Zadayan has the story from Sayreville.
Nothing makes sense. Not to me, not from what I know of Eunice. And not to our community.
Sayreville Mayor Victoria Kilpatrick says she and her town are still in shock.
You're not quite sure how to move forward. Grief takes multiple stages, and I know myself that I'm going through multiple stages of that grief.
Nearly 2 weeks after the still unsolved murder of a beloved councilwoman, her friend Eunice Dwumfour.
Who could want to hurt this woman? And not just hurt this woman, brutally murder her in cold blood.
Dwumfour was the head of the town's Public Safety Standing Committee, but the mayor said that appointment was not without controversy. The mayor received a letter in January objecting to Dwumfour's appointment, that letter coming from the Sayreville Police Union.
When I received that letter, I was concerned.
That letter is now in the hands of investigators. The president of the Sayreville PBA, David Civilli, said in a phone interview his union simply believed another council member was a better fit for the public safety position. Sayreville referred further questions to the PBA's attorney.
Does it at all concern you that some of the people who opposed her appointment are now in charge of investigating her murder?
It does make me feel a bit unsettled, to say the least.
David Sayreville filed a lawsuit claiming that Mayor Kilpatrick implied he was involved in Dwumfour's killing. The lawsuit alleges the mayor's statements defamed him by suggesting suspicion or involvement in the murder. 2 weeks after the interview you just watched, Sayreville, who also served as deputy chairman and a member of the borough's zoning board of adjustment, claims he was forced to resign from the zoning board position because of the mayor's remarks, although Mayor Kilpatrick did not mention Sayreville by name. A month later, on April 24th, Sayreville, while on overtime, was providing security at the council meetings. Sayreville's lawsuit also alleged that on May 22, 2023, Kilpatrick said she would no longer be attending the council meetings in person because Sayreville's presence at the council meetings make her feel uncomfortable and unsafe, ostensibly due to his alleged involvement in Councilwoman Dwumfour's murder. Sayreville also claims he was forced to step down as deputy chairman of the Sayreville Democratic Organization because of her remarks. Again, it is important to note that Mayor Kilpatrick never even mentioned Sayreville by name. Could this be more intimidation tactics applied to those who stand in the way of people who seek power, gain, and influence in local politics?
I don't want this story to fall out of the headlines, because when things fall out of the headlines, I feel like people stop paying attention, and we don't have closure.
The replacement choice of Eunice's council seat is significant in terms of the beneficiaries and those who are awarded gain as a result of such a tragic murder. At a council meeting in late February of 2023, just weeks after the murder, the former chief of police in Sayreville, John Zabrowski, was chosen to fill Eunice's elected duties on council. This decision, which contrasts markedly with Dwumfour's role as a civilian council member and, at the time of her death, the council's public safety liaison, sent chills across Sayreville and New Jersey. This appointment raised questions about representation, power, and what the replacement signified for public safety oversight, community trust, and political balance. Given that Dwumfour had been a critic and skeptic of certain police practices, filling her seat with a career police officer was perceived by many as symbolically consolidating police influence on council rather than continuing her independent oversight role. This appointment effectively gave police regained control, which eroding the public trust of many. What's possibly the most troublesome factor in the killing of the Sayreville Republican councilwoman is that Phil Murphy, the Democratic governor of New Jersey, said within 24 hours of Eunice's death was that the murder doesn't appear to be politically motivated. Within such a short time frame, after such a horrific murder, what could Governor Murphy had known about the killing? Did he have first-hand privileged information on what may have transpired? Or was this some form of signaling to any investigators who may be involved with the case to steer clear away from any outcome that relates to political retaliation from political rivals or possible law enforcement involvement? This was viewed by many concerned members of the public who were closely paying attention to this case, that something else could be at stake. Something much more alarming and terrifying than a personal attack. Shortly after Dwumfour's murder, Mayor Kilpatrick received an anonymous handwritten letter delivered filled with swastikas and racial slurs. Among the reported contents, a racial epithet. The letter writer apparently used a slur and called the mayor a N-lover, and references to Dwumfour's killing and a hateful statement like, "More of you need to go." Racial tension and divide has been at the forefront of inner dealings in Sayreville, under the leadership of the former chief and acting councilman John Zembrowski, and a hostile work environment. In 2014, veteran officer Joseph Monaco filed a lawsuit against the Sayreville Police Department and certain supervisors. He alleged that after he blew the whistle on a fellow officer for falsifying a timesheet, he was ostracized, subjected to homophobic slurs, homo, queer, and retaliated against. He described the department as having become a dangerous and hostile workplace. According to the borough's public records, on November 14, 2022, the governing body approved a settlement agreement between Monaco and the borough of Sayreville, paying him $250,000 to resolve the lawsuit. Now, it's reasonable to conclude that if the person who was convicted of Eunice's murder was a black man sentenced to life in prison by the name Rashid Bynum, didn't write the handwritten letter calling Mayor Kilpatrick an N-lover, saying more of you need to go. With the known racial tension in Sayreville, who did? After all, Governor Phil Murphy made that claim that Eunice's murder wasn't politically motivated, but that handwritten letter was indeed an attempt to disturb the current political atmosphere by instilling fear in the mayor, who served as the tie-breaking vote to reappoint Eunice to the public safety liaison position. So let's suppose for a minute that Governor Murphy indeed was correct within 24 hours of the killing, that the murder of the councilwoman was in fact a personal attack with no ties to disrupt the political landscape in Sayreville. This handwritten hate letter to the mayor was certainly a direct effort to do exactly that. So if we accept the official narrative that the murder alone had no political ties, we still cannot accept that certain personalities and figures sought to gain power and influence in the immediate aftermath of Eunice's killing, which ultimately amounts to political tampering. What better time to disturb the political atmosphere and landscape while the public still had unanswered questions due to the fact that Rashid Bynum was arrested 4 months after the tragic killing? Many people in the general public see an issue with being shot 14 times right outside her home, 7 of which were directly fired in the face of the councilwoman being anything other than retaliation for speaking out against something someone took issue with. Since the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office was unable to provide a motive at trial, a murder this heinous and so violent surely leaves unanswered questions that the conviction itself doesn't answer. Since we dug into some of the racial tension in Sayreville and collected publicly available information surrounding what transpired in the weeks leading up to Eunice's murder and what took place in the following weeks, we can reasonably conclude that pressure was applied to remove Eunice from the public safety liaison position and remove the mayor from attending her own council meetings in person by placing civili at the council meetings to provide security, and ultimately from her position indefinitely by means of fear for her safety after receiving that handwritten hate mail. It is extremely important to remember that the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office initially sued media groups from obtaining information surrounding who stood to benefit from the killing of the councilwoman, including the correspondence sent by civili the president of PBA Local 98, before withdrawing the lawsuit within 24 hours of the filing. How is the public expected to entrust the establishment and the institutions when so much effort is made to hide the facts and information that is conflicting with the official narrative of Eunice's murder? It is believed by many in New Jersey that the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office has been entangled with corruption for decades and will always remain compromised in terms of accountability and transparency with the current atmosphere of those who seek power, gain, and influence. With Eunice's seat and public safety liaison position being filled by the former chief of police, John Zabrowski, it is clear who benefited from this horrific tragedy. Beneficiaries of this murder does not amount to guilt or involvement of the killing, but it is beyond troubling, and local and mainstream media decline to report on these connections. The situation and circumstances surrounding the killing of the councilwoman compelled 2 locally known unconventional activists in New Jersey to attend the council meeting in Sayreville during a time of high tension, when most people stayed silent out of fear of retaliation for speaking up, hoping to receive answers from Mayor Kilpatrick regarding her in-person absence at the meetings. The mayor took part remotely out of fear for her safety, and her comments in response to the issues raised by the 2 men put a microscope on her thoughts and reasoning for why she decided to not seek re-election. Let's now take a look at that meeting on May the 22nd of 2023, almost 16 weeks after the murder, when no arrest had been made and Eunice's killer was still on the loose. The first gentleman you will see speaking is Social Justice Waterpipe, a dedicated New Jersey medical cannabis activist who committed to government transparency and accountability. Social Justice Waterpipe has traveled across New Jersey for many years, holding governing bodies accountable in countless municipalities.
I think you're a good mayor, and I don't want you to not seek re-election due to fear. It kills me to see the whole political landscape of Sayreville having been turned upside down after the murder of the beautiful Eunice, who was a political rising star. I've been waiting, hoping like the rest of you all that something would come about and they find who the person is or the perpetrator or whatever. Seems like every time I turn my head up, it's another racially infused thing. More has been done to kind of hide the facts and stuff. And I know you guys aren't the investigators. I think we've all been, putting faith in the investigation, hoping that, the police do their job and they come up with some leads and stuff. Reading in the paper that the borough official phone was not looked into, a laptop wasn't looked into. To think that there's people being threatened or scared about how to proceed with things because of whatever's going on behind closed doors, the things that the public aren't seeing. I don't know what's going on. I have no idea. We still have no idea what's happened to this poor councilwoman. No answers, no leads. And it's just frustrating.
I agree with that 100%. It's very frustrating, disheartening, and sad. And I appreciate your understanding and empathy in relation to the situation that I find myself in. And I'm very grateful for the people like yourself that have reached out. It's one of the hardest decisions I've had to make. And I am not comfortable. I know some people turn around and they say, oh, she's using this as an excuse not to run. Trust me, had I felt safe and had my children felt safe, there's no doubt I would be running and seeking re-election.
I believe that, Mayor.
We have and I'm using this right now. I have to say pause, because I don't know what the future holds for me. I don't know if I will be back fighting for that seat again. But for right now, we do not know who murdered Eunice. We do not know why. And until I have those answers, my family does not sleep as peacefully as they used to. And I do not sleep as peaceful as I used to, nor do my parents and my husband. And I appreciate your empathy.
All of this is very troublesome. That's why I'm here. I don't want people to stay silent. I want people to speak up about these concerns. I want this murder to get solved. I want to see everybody go back to having a little bit of peace and being able to sleep at night with less fear. That's what I want. And I know I'm not the only one. Thank you.
I agree with you.
Mayor Kilpatrick offers even more insight after the second speaker approaches the podium. This speaker's name is Edward Lefty Grimes of Sativa Cross. Edward is a longtime medical cannabis activist and podcaster who also fights for disability rights, who goes by the name El Rampador when donning his wrestler mask.
I'm gonna look directly at the mayor. Mayor, do not live in fear. God has a plan. I know you believe in God. Good will always defeat evil. This evil will not survive. I'm telling you, Mayor, do not give up. You need to sit back on this council, because if they're going to come after you, they're going to come after you at home. They're going to come after you whatever. So you might as well come here, sit next to the devil, and go down swinging with the rest of us. Fight this evil with us. This is evil. This is satanic, what's going on in this town. And people that would stick up for racism and defend racism is just as bad. You should not defend racism. Mayor, why are you afraid to come to this town? Do you not feel the police can protect you? Why do you feel that?
I'm not afraid to. I'm actually in this town. I love my town. When it comes to the council being seated there, I do have concern about coming there because I don't feel that we have enough security in place. I think that there's a couple of things that we need to do in order to make sure that our residents feel safe and comfortable. I made this public. It's been on the news. I did receive a letter sent to my office that had to be sent out for investigation. I don't know what the outcome of that was. And I actually have never held that letter in my hand. I was only read it over the phone. And I was told by the police chief that the prosecutor was not willing to let me actually have a copy of that letter so that I could hold it in my hands and actually look at it. What was read to me was the most disturbing, nasty, heinous, disgusting things I've ever had to address to myself. And it was laden with swastikas, and it was also punctuated with swastikas right on the heels of Eunice's murder. Some people might argue that the letter wasn't directly threatening my life, but I'm sorry, it's close enough. And for my children, close enough. when it comes to coming into council chambers, I will say I did come into council chambers once I was told that we were going to have a little bit more increased security. I was uncomfortable, however, with the officer that was selected to do that detail that day, because I know that there is in fact opposition with myself and other letters that were sent to me regarding Eunice's appointment. So I didn't find that to be the most comforting environment for myself either. So after attempting to come and feeling comfortable in that seat, after that day, I chose, really after speaking with my family, that that's really not the best environment for me right now. But I do love this town and I do feel safe. And when it comes to me being able to control where I am and when I'm in certain environments, I've taken it upon myself to protect my family to the best of my ability. Do I believe that the police are there to protect and support? Yes, I do. But there is just way too many unanswered questions. Even with our police force, they can't be everywhere. I don't have around the clock police security. We're not like, senators and, people in Congress. We don't get that detail here as elected officials. We're locally elected officials and we are highly visible. And I have no idea who shot Eunice multiple times. I have no idea who that dark figure was that was apparently running away. I have no idea why, but I do know, in living in the political landscape that I've been a part of, that there are things that make me feel very uncomfortable. So I don't know what caused her murder, who caused her murder, and why. So until I have those answers, I'm going to protect myself. But I am going to fight like hell, and I am going to make sure whether I'm sitting in that seat or whether I'm sitting here, I'm going to call out what I need to call out.
That's why we need you here.
Thank you.
We need God-fearing people like you to defeat the evil that's going on here. Governor Murphy, actually, it wasn't just Governor Murphy. It was Governor Murphy and all his billionaire friends decided to turn the investigation one way. Now, his billionaire friends, of course, control New Jersey. So everything went that way. The FBI, everybody went one way. They said, don't look over here, look over here. It wasn't political. Well, how did Governor Murphy know that? What did he know that we don't know? Let me tell you one thing that I do know. I got a PBA card here because I help good cops. This is here, Mr. Zabrowski, you see this? It's a brand new PBA card. I get this every year. I help the good cops, and I love good cops. There's nothing better than a good cop, and there's nothing worse than a bad cop. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Zabrowski? Nothing worse, right?
After these two gentlemen spoke at the council meeting, there was no way to hide or mistaken that Mayor Kilpatrick was left feeling uneasy over her safety due to the fact that Eunice's killer had not been apprehended. The racial tension within the borough that existed before and after she received the hate mail with swastikas calling her an N-lover and stating, "More of you need to go." And due to the fact that Sayreville, who filed a lawsuit against Kilpatrick, who also sent her an email requesting that Eunice not be reappointed to the public safety liaison, was providing security for the council meetings, which left Kilpatrick with the exact opposite feeling of being secure. This clearly was designed to intimidate the mayor, which resulted in her absence of in-person attendance at the council meetings, and ultimately resulted in her decision to not seek re-election. So in conclusion, let's suppose that Rashid Bynum was indeed the killer of Eunice Dwumfour. The prosecutor's office in Middlesex County could not provide a motive for the killing at trial, and it does not and cannot explain who was behind the hate letter. Let's also keep in mind that the prosecutor's office could not provide any reason why they would file a lawsuit against media groups who sought publicly available information in regards to the killing. These crucial answers remain unknown, and leaves the public questioning whether or not these were attempts to cover up who possibly could have committed this atrocious act of violence. Eunice being shot right outside her home was clearly a deliberate, targeted murder. But is the person serving a life sentence, in fact, the one who pulled the trigger? The person that shot Eunice 14 times, 7 of which were in her face? What did he stand to gain from the murder of the councilwoman? Did someone possibly pay Rashid Bynum to murder Eunice? Were the efforts to withhold this information simply designed to keep the public from questioning who sought to gain power and influence? An attempt to conceal the letter Sayreville sent in opposition to Eunice's reappointment just a few weeks after the councilwoman made unfavorable statements about her experience with police? Is it a mere coincidence that the former Chief John Zembrowski took the place of Eunice on council and acquired the role of public safety liaison? Or was it a matter of circumstance? These are all very important questions that we likely may never have answers to. It is reasonable to conceive that these answers died along with the councilwoman that February night, who was a rising star in Republican politics, a mother, a church leader, and the youngest person to be elected to the Sayreville Council, along with being the first elected person of African descent. Although these answers remain unknown, we can conclude that racial tension played a role in the altering of the political arena and landscape in Sayreville, and the unknown surrounding Eunice's murder will always linger in the backs of people's minds and her memory in our hearts. Eunice died young. At the time of her tragic death, she exited this world, leaving behind an 11-year-old daughter at the time of her death. This documentary was not easy to make. The story of Eunice's death has always been on my mind. It has its way of coming and going with my thoughts as I regularly attend council meetings across New Jersey with the purpose of holding government accountable while striving for transparency. The mainstream and local media decline to report on these connections surrounding Eunice's death. So, as an independent journalist who covers stories surrounding council meetings across New Jersey, it became apparent that I needed to do so. This video is the first of its kind for myself, as typically my videos are documentations of my accounts of my personal experience with municipalities. Sayreville always held a place in my heart, as it served as the first council meeting in New Jersey where I became compelled to speak out at a meeting. That meeting was in regards to cannabis, but it set off a chain of events that led myself to the space of government accountability and transparency. If you like this documentary, I ask that you kindly subscribe and share this video of Eunice's murder and help keep the unknown answers alive with the hopes to one day find out who was responsible for that horrific hate letter sent to Mayor Kilpatrick. The killing of the councilwoman was beyond an atrocious act of violence. Whether the murder itself was politically motivated or not, violence and fear shall never have a space in our political discourse. I'll end with a song memorializing the memory of the young, beautiful councilwoman whose life was tragically taken all too soon. Rest in peace, Eunice.